It's FrightFest Television again, and here I am with one of my really, really good friends, Buddy Giovainazzo. Now, he's the director of one of our attractions this year, A Night of Nightmares, but Buddy and I go back far more years than I care to remember, because I actually reviewed his film Combat Shock. What was that? Was it 1984?
85.
85.
86.
And he loved my review so much, he actually got hold of me. He wrote to the magazine, which was Shock Express at the time, and gave me a rave review about my rave review, and it was absolutely fantastic. And then we got to know each other, and then we found out we actually share the same birth date, which is amazing. And we've actually been all around the world together, more or less, haven't we? It's been really strange.
We've been on a world tour. I have to preface your review because it doesn't seem like much today because it's gotten so many good reviews over the years, but at the time of its release, it was universally hated. I mean, it was not accepted by any film festival. I submitted the film to over 54 festivals because I'm Italian, so I'm vindictive, so I remember that number. And you wrote, you got the film. You were probably the only journalist who really got the film. So I felt an immediate kinship. I felt like this guy's heart is in a similar place than my heart. So I just wrote you. I was in Staten Island, New York at the time. And so that's the preface, because today there have been so many good reviews. It's just, I don't want to sound like I'm a critic whore and I'm just writing every critic and saying, hey, I love you, you did a good review. It was just at that time, you were the only guy to really get it.
So why has Combat Shock grown in stature? Do you think people have now seen it as something, as an artifact from the 80s, and it's like what it was trying to say then is more relevant now, do you think?
That's what I thought at one time, but then, living in America, I live in Berlin, but I spend a lot of time in America. There's so much poverty and there's so much hopelessness that it's really topical, and I think people get it. They're surprised to see a film that was shot in the mid-80s, that when you're watching it today, it doesn't look so different than what life is today. In America, there's a tremendous amount of poverty and hopelessness, and we have no security net. So when you lose your job in America, it's a terrifying prospect. So I think Combat Shock touches on that fear. My whole course of work, the reason I work is I just make films and I write books about people that I'm glad not to be. So like at the end of the day, no matter how fucked up my life could be, I could just say, well, it's not as bad as Frankie's. And it's sort of a relief to just think, like, why am I complaining? This guy has, whatever I don't have, he has so much less. So that's been a thread that's running through all my work. That's why my characters are always, downtrodden, and they fall through the cracks. And people can always say, oh, it's not like that. There are programs that help. Yeah, there are, but there are so many people that fall between these programs.
Sure.
And so,
I mean, you have had an interesting career, because there was that time when we all thought that you were going to actually, become, Hollywood mainstream. You could have done if you wanted to, but you decided you really didn't want to. You actually wanted to stay with films that you really believed in and you felt said something, and I thought it was amazing, really.
It's tough. I was able to teach film. I probably without being a film professor. I'm not a professor, but I was teaching at a film college. So I was always able to find a way to live and then still do my own films. I'll tell you the truth. I would like one time in my career to do a big studio film. Not even a big, just do like a $20, $30, $40 million film. Just to be once on that level and just, to have that experience behind me. The friends that I have, and actually I have a good friend, Christian Albert, did antibodies. He's had that. Yeah. He's had that experience, and it was a nightmare. And when I hear what he says, it's almost like most of me says, fuck that. I'd rather do the $100,000 film and be the author of that film and be able to put my soul into it than to do like a $40 million Hollywood film where I got like, the executive secretary doesn't like the scene in the bathroom, so you have to cut it out. And that's really what it was. And so, but I think one time, I think I'm old enough now where I could deal with that political nightmare. One time I'd like to try it.
So Night of Nightmares, which we're pleased to show, you showed it in Fantasia. Give us a rough idea of what it's about now. It was originally called Ginger, because it's about a singer and about an interviewer for a website who goes and sees her, and then things go quite downhill from there, really. So I mean, tell us what it's about. Why did you want to do this particular story?
I didn't want to do it. The producers were talking to me about it because one of the producers of Cracktown was one of the producers on this, So he was talking to me about it, and it just didn't sound like my thing. You know, it was like, you know, haunted house type of thing. They wanted to shoot it with friends at a house that they knew, and it just wasn't for me. So I read the script, and I fell in love with the character of Ginger. And the script that I read was like sort of a cheap Poltergeist ripoff, you know, plates flying through the air, doors closing by themselves, doors hitting people. And I wasn't interested in anything like that, but I loved the character. So I go to them, I go back to them, I say, listen, if you guys will let me make this as a real movie. It was also a completely found footage movie, which meant you have a haunted house film where a guy's running around with his camera. He's in terror of his life, but he doesn't forget to bring his camera with him and film everything. And I just said, I can't relate to that whatsoever, because, you know, when I'm in terror, I'm not going to think about filming with the camera. If the camera's in the other room, I'm going to leave it and just run and save myself. So they agreed to let me make a real movie out of it, and to use the camera as part of the story, where it would make sense. So we came to an agreement, and they said, okay. I said, if I can make this into, like, if I can put my fingerprints in this film, I'd be interested in making it. And they were faced with the prospect of going with a film student and doing it like super dirt cheap in a week, or bringing somebody like me on and trying to make it into a real movie. And so they let me take my pass at the script, and I did like a major rewrite. And basically, I found the location, and then I just tailored it to what I had. You know, for instance, in the original script, the house seals itself up. So they're trapped in the house. They physically cannot get out of the house, which means he can't open the door, he can't smash a window. And I realized to go into a house like that and rig it where you can't smash windows. Because if I'm in a house that I can't get out of, my first instinct is to grab a chair and throw it through the window, or at least attempt. And I knew that we couldn't do stuff like that. And I wasn't interested in stuff like that. So I wrote it as a character piece and said, let it be more about these characters that goes into a left turn, sort of like a David Lynchian approach. Because I'm still a huge fan of David Lynch. And so, you know, and they agreed. They had some brilliant ideas they wanted me to do. They would come up with things like, how about if we filmed a bloody bathtub and there's a bathtub with blood in it? That would be really creepy. And I say, how about if we don't do that? That'd be really creepy too if we didn't do that. You know, so I had all these kooky ideas coming up. Let's put smoke in the background. You know, there's a smoke going through the house. And I said, no, let's not. Nobody smokes in this film. It's a non-smoking film.
They've got a good cast. I think Mark Central, of course, male lead we love from films like The Lost and Red, White and Blue.
Red, White and Blue.
Yeah, Brawler as well, which I loved him in actually. And mention your leading lady, because you know you wanted her. You wrote this really specifically for her in a way.
I always had. She auditioned, but I always had her in mind. When I read the script, I saw her, and to me, she's done a lot of films, but she was never really showcased. You know, she's done films where they would do 2 takes, 1 take. Sometimes they'd even do half a take. And I'd see her, and I'd see this like raw talent that had no outlet, and there was no fine tuning. And I just thought, wow, I would love to take an actress like that and bring her into a real story and direct her. And so she came in and she auditioned, and she was like a diamond in the rough. But I was attracted to the eyes. She has these incredible blue eyes. And for me, I think, the same thing with Mark Center, that's the most important element on every actor. Because basically it's visual. You put the camera on their face, and the audience either goes with it and accepts that character, or they don't. And so, you know, I cast her. The producers originally, they wanted to go for like the classic beauty, blonde, blue-eyed, big tits, running, you know, in a bikini through the house. And I just said, that's boring for 90 minutes. Who the hell wants to see that? I mean, so I convinced them to let's go in another direction. And so they went, and I just think she's terrific. I hope that this changes her career and gives her more of a profile, because she works a lot, and she's, you know, and she's not that different from the character, because she is a singer. So, and I find like when most people, you know, most normal people could probably play a role in a film. It's not that they can play any role. You know, you could probably cast anybody if they're in the right role.
There's even a chance for me, buddy.
You have a role in the Property Street.
That's right.
When that film gets made, you're in it.
I've been waiting for 20 years for you to put me in that film. Never going to happen.
I
Listen, I know we must mention the actual location, because that's an interesting story behind the location, so say that.
Well, we were looking long and hard in the California, Los Angeles area for locations, and we found a bunch of houses, and we found very film-friendly houses. By film-friendly, I mean we had people that owned houses that said, please come in, do whatever you want. you know, rearrange it, rebuild it, whatever, and that was like really attractive. But they didn't have the right feel. And then pretty much a few weeks before shooting, we found this cabin up in the mountains about an hour away from Los Angeles. And the guy running it was a musician. So I felt immediately a kinship with him. He had instruments everywhere. So we started hanging out, and he wasn't into money. You know, he was just like a guy living in this cabin. He was like the caretaker. They had 8 dogs. So he starts telling me about the house. And this house was one of the homes of the Charles Manson family before they moved to the Spahn Ranch, which was really interesting. So I said, holy shit, tell me what was up. Now, he hadn't been there, but the owner was a Marine, a heavy-duty retired Marine. So he let the family live on the ranch because it was a big area. And 3 days before Thanksgiving, they killed all his killed all his turkeys and ate them. So he was steamed. He was saving these turkeys for Thanksgiving. So he threw them all off the ranch. And the guy that I was talking to about the house said they were afraid of the Marine, which tells you what this farmer had to be like. He was like a big, burly guy. So he threw them off the ranch, and then they went to the Spahn Ranch. And then it's history what took place there.
Wow.
So, yeah, it's, you know, it was a beautiful location. We really didn't do much to it. I mean, that's the way it is. That's that house. It's in the middle of nowhere with no heat. You know, it barely has a toilet.
A lot of people, I mean, a lot of people saw the film last night. We talked to them afterwards. I spoke to them after that. And they really liked it. They went for it, didn't they? There was a really, really lot of love for the movie in that audience.
Yeah.
And so, and it's an unusual film in a way because it's like quite subtle the way it sort of works. So, are you surprised by that? You think people more want, you know, full face stuff, full on stuff, but you think that's why it was working?
You know, it's interesting. It's probably the mildest film I've made. As you know all my films, and would you agree?
Yeah, it is.
It is the mildest film in that when I do violence, I believe in full realistic violence, and I've seen violence in my life as a New Yorker living downtown, and I know that when somebody gets shot, it's a fucking bloodbath. When somebody gets shot, it's like putting a hole in a bucket filled with water. That bucket empties, and that's what people do when they're shot. So that's always been my approach to violence, is make it shocking because it is shocking. And this film was something different. We were going for more of a relationship, love story. I mean, that's, you know, all my films are love stories in a bizarre, sort of twisted way. And that's sort of what I like to bring into it, because I think those two things, if you have love and a very dark subject matter, I think it really works well, because people, they can then relate to your characters, because everybody can relate to love. What do we want? We want love, we want friendship, we want good things in our life, even though a ton of shit happens to us all the time. So this, you know, I went in knowing that this wasn't going to be a blood fest. And after the Theater Bazaar, which for me was a blood fest, I mean, got it all out of my system, that the ending of the Theater Bazaar for me is, that's truly what I love. When I'm on set and I just see blood flowing like that, and I just think, wow, yeah, more.
Now we must mention the fact that you do sort of like, you're based in Berlin now. I've seen you a number of times there. Every time I go over to do a location, you're there. Yeah. But you do like you know, German television thrillers. Yeah. I mean, how does that satisfy you as an artist, though, or does it? It
doesn't. I mean, it satisfies me in that. You know, here's the best example. I couldn't have made A Night of Nightmares if I didn't do all these German films. Because I've been in Germany now for about 12 years, and I've done, in that time, 14 features. Which means I've worked with, like, some of the best actors in Germany. So, you know, I've been through everything that can go wrong on a set. So even, like, when we're doing these low-budget indie films, like Cracktown and A Night of Nightmares, and even Theater Bazaar, when the shit starts going crazy and everybody's freaking out, I'm like, I'm zen. I'm zen, because I know, like, all right, if this happens, we're going to pretend that that's what we wanted the entire time. And I found that you have to embrace the elements that are coming, because it's every film in some ways is a gigantic accident, you know, and it's how you approach it, how you steer it. You know, I'm like driving this big bus, and I'm trying not to crash into a building. And if the building's here, I'm going to just turn here a bit, you know. And so the German stuff allowed me to have that experience and to work with actors. Now, Mark Center is one of the best actors I've ever worked with, because he's a natural, gifted actor, and he's got a tremendous technique in that this character in A Night of Nightmares is nothing like the guy in Red, White, and Blue, or The Lost, or even Brawler. That's a tribute to Mark as an actor. Alyssa, on the other hand, didn't know what she had. She didn't even know how good she was. So, like, I had to direct her in a completely different way than I would direct Mark. and I basically took her kicking and screaming through this film because she hadn't been used to a guy that wanted 15 takes to get it right, or to get a certain emotion, or and so it was just really the experience of doing all these German films just gave me the experience to be able to sit down with them. The German films, I have a box. I'm in this box. There's a murder, there's an investigation, there's a solution. And as long as I do that in every film, I can do whatever I want. But it's this box. And I'm on set, I'm in Germany, I just did a film in Cologne, and I'm standing there and I'm directing and I hear the same sentence that I've heard in the last 13 films I've made, which is, where were you on the night of June 7th at 8 p.m.? Because somewhere in a stupid crime movie, somebody's going to have to say that question. And I say, oh my God, I'm a hack.
No, you aren't, and you know that. You're
No.
actually one of the most interesting, still one of the most interesting filmmakers around, which is why we have you over here, and we love you, and we want you to stay in the genre. And I mean, what is the prognosis for A Night of Nights? Have you sold it around the world? What's going to happen?
No, this is the second screening we've had. This is our European premiere. We're looking to try and sell. I think that we're looking to get a sales agent on to help us. So rather than trying us sell it market by market, try and hook up with a good sales agent, a good distributor out here. Arrow would actually be a good home for you.
They would. They should be here to watch it, shouldn't they?
Yeah.
I don't know where Tom is actually.
No, they're not here. I contacted them.
All right.
But that's what we're looking to do. And I'm just, I'm not in this for the money. I'm looking to make another movie. So if A Night of Nightmares can bring me to the attention of a producer that has a vision that I can share, that's what I'd really love to do, is hook up with a producer that has a vision. Because a lot of producers don't have visions. It's business, and it's only business. I get that. I mean, I'm old enough. I know the deal. I don't want anybody to lose money on a film that I make. But I'd also like to just hook up with someone that has a real vision too. And if I can find that combination, that would be, for me, perfect.
Great. Well, listen, you're welcome back to FrightFest anytime you like. You know that, right?
I
So
love
thank you.
It's a great festival.
Thanks, buddy.
Thank you.
Fantastic.